Chris, you will appreciate some of these pops and burbles once you get really slow. There you go. Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and I am out here in beautiful Orange County, California, while Chris is stuck at home in rainy, early spring southeastern Michigan reviewing a Hyundai Santa Cruz. So I present to him the BMW M8 competition. This thing is gorgeous. There's no getting around how cool this thing looks. Imola red is the paint, I believe Silverstone white or something like that inside. We'll take a look at that here in a moment. But the 8 Series in general has always existed to be a sex object, and there's no getting around how good this thing looks. I think it kind of looks like a BMW Mustang, if you will. The coupe proportions here. Don't forget, you can also get it in Grand Coupe, which gives you the 4 doors and an actually usable back seat, as you'll see in a moment. Entirely unusable back seat on this one. But we have two 75s in the front and two 85s in the rear, wrapped in Pirelli P0 rubber, specifically coordinated for this car. All-wheel drive, of course, and the lovely M-tuned 4.4 liter twin turbocharged V8 motor underneath, 617 horsepower, 553 pound-feet of torque, which I will say is enough. It really makes this car pretty darn crazy. Also, you can see here, this grille, not as large as a lot of the other BMW products, but fully functional. Behind these slats, these flimsy plastic slats, a lot of air being gulped in for that radiator there. This does have nearly $30,000 worth of options on here. Journalist spec, as you will. It's got the carbon package, giving you a bunch of carbon fiber bits, including this splitter, which thankfully, as you can see, is not carbon fiber all the way down, because I, as well as presumably many others around here, have scraped it more than once. But they were smart enough to not put carbon fiber all the way down. You have carbon fiber mirror caps, carbon fiber roof, which certainly lowers the center of gravity of the car, I would imagine. Carbon fiber lip spoiler back here, the rear. And of course, they paid a little extra for the BMW 50th anniversary badges, which I couldn't blame them. Actually, a decently usable trunk. Alyssa and I had our large suitcase and our small suitcase and 2 backpacks in here, and they just barely fit. So you can actually use this for a good bit of weekend road tripping. And I mean, the M8 competition specifically, I see as a bit more of a flexmobile than the other 8 Series. Personally, I prefer more of the 840 and 850i's, but you know me, I'm a very practical sort of person. So we'll talk about that. It's just the fact that the M850i still packs a serious punch off the line and costs $30,000 less than this one, but you don't get the bragging rights, so we'll talk about that. The big old carbon ceramic discs in there with the bronze brake calipers. I'm sure this thing is a beast, even out on track, despite its hefty weight, although not the heaviest M product anymore. That title belongs to the XM 6,000 pound beast. Pillarless doors, that does it for me there, Chris. Take a look at this thing. Obviously, there's not really going to be too much to see because it's all plastic, but very tight. Would not want to be Keone working on this thing in 15 or 20 years. But I mean, realistically, that's the fate of the big, highest power 8 Series cars. It's just going to be like the first generation 8 Series, where we see one on Facebook Marketplace or something, and we're like, oh, does it have the V12? It's going to be, oh, does it have the twin turbo V8, the M motor? That's going to be the story for this one. Bunch of badges in here telling you that it's an M8 competition in case you were to wake up from a coma in the driver's seat and not know what you were driving. Beautiful interior, though. I actually do really like the feel of this leather. BMW leather isn't always fantastic in the cheaper cars, but this stuff feels proper, and I've enjoyed being in it. Just to get it out of the way, let's take a quick experiment here with the rear seats. As you can see, really not much room. Fortunately, the seat does pull itself away. Crawl into here. I know you'd love this. Even before I pull the seat back, no headroom. I mean, this is worse than, what was that car we had recently that was a coupe that you couldn't really use the back seat in? Can't remember, but this, the M2. This has less room in the back than the M2, which is kind of comical to me considering how large it is. This comes back and hits my legs, and the seat actually notices that and comes forward a little bit, but I mean, this is children only. You get the Grand Coupe if you actually expect to be using your back seats. That comes forward, and we get ourselves out. Fortunately, the front seat is a much nicer place to be. At this point, I've put just over 300 miles in the car, and it's been nice to be in here, I gotta admit. We hopped in it out of LAX, and immediately comfortable. I mean, even though it had been a long day of travel already, I was able to just hop right in. CarPlay set up very smoothly, wireless, of course, and then I was on my way. Kind of a cool, shiny wood interior in here. I don't know if it's probably worth pulling this thing under some tree here so that you can see a little bit better. Let's see. There we are. So you can see as I sing the sound of my people here to this church. I guess I might as well turn it off. Little bits, the wireless device charger does work well. However, with a tiny phone like mine, and I don't know how yours would work, Chris, the big boy, but I put this in here. Anytime you get on a throttle about more than, say, a half from a stoplight, it slides forward and stops wireless charging. So that is something to consider, especially because it does suck your battery when you're doing wireless CarPlay. This car does have the heated panels along with the heated seats. I quite appreciate that because driving along, and even though it's 55 degrees out here, you know, it might be a little bit chilly in the evening, and you turn that on and your whole body kind of gets this, nice. That does it for me, that little touch right there. And of course it has the heated steering wheel button where you like, because we're still using iDrive 7 in this car. It does feel a little bit antiquated now after using so many BMWs with iDrive 8, but it's also kind of nice. It's like putting on an old pair of jeans. It's like, oh yeah, this system just works. Not a ton of places to put things. I've actually had to put my water bottle in the center the glove box here. I don't know how that's going to sound on the mountain roads, but for just me and Alyssa driving around in this thing, it's been nice. It really has. This is a cruiser at the end of the day. This is the epitome of a grand tour. But let's get this thing out on the road. I'm actually going to follow Miles up there on his drive route, and we'll kind of see. We'll talk about why you might want one of these, or why you might not want one, and why you might want to step down to either something like the 850i, or maybe consider the offerings from Mercedes-AMG. Also, I should point out that I did review the 16-speaker Harman Kardon sound systems. Check the link in the description for that. Unfortunately, it needs tweaking. There's a reason why the 9-band equalizer is important in this car. Out playing around on the canyon roads with Miles. He's up there in a little Mazda 3 Turbo. Of course, we got the big boy. This thing dances better than you think it would. Any of my complaints come from, ironically, the smoothness of the 4.4 liter. It's just so good and powerful and not dramatic that it feeds power similarly to an electric vehicle. It's just right there. And since a lot of that sound is piped in, I mean, you compare it, if I press M1, turn that off, listen. I mean, that's what it sounds like without any piped in noise, and it just obviously isn't as exciting. I think it sounds better than the piped in noise, but it's just such a refined motor that it does take away from the drama a little bit. Not only that, but the steering is very artificial and predictable. It's tough because someone who does want to get an M8 comp and have it to flex with and drive it hard and look cool and go fast, it's gonna be very approachable. You're gonna be able to do it just like Miles is not gonna be able to run away from me in that Mazda. From a driver's car standpoint, someone who appreciates things like Porsche Cayman S's, they're not gonna appreciate as much the general feel of this car. And that's not to say anything about its capabilities. It's just the digital feeling, the feeling of this car doesn't need you. It could do this on its own. But it is so powerful and so fast, and it is fun to drive quickly. I mean, I've been having a good time out here, don't get me wrong. And you can actually have a little bit of fun with it as well if you turn it into this M dynamic mode. If I get a chance, I'll kind kind of toss it around. But if you get a 90-degree corner, you can hang it out, and the four-wheel drive system does balance torque in a fun way. And Chris, you will appreciate some of these pops and burbles once you get really slow. There you go. Very sports touring coupe feeling, which is good. It does feel like I could put on 500 miles on this car driving cross country, and then when I do hit a beautiful road like this, I slap that M2 button, turn it up to 10 tenths, and have a really good time. It does feel like a sporty car, and I do appreciate that. The low proportions, the coupe cabin and greenhouse in here, it does work for me. Chris, you'll appreciate my millennial music. I suspect Miles may have wanted to go this way as a route that he feels like he could get away from me on, because the Mazda 3 would feel a little bit less treacherous than this giant thing. Playing a little cat and mouse, if you will. Sport suspension really does get old in situations like this. Chassis, even Sport Plus. Let's dial that back down to comfort. Why was my engine inefficient? It's weird. Alright. Ooh, that is beautiful. Holy cow. In case you've never seen BMW's Driving Assist Plus in action, this is how nice it is. Huge backup here on Highway 5 heading down towards San Diego. Been stopped for at least 20 minutes or so in this kind of stop and go deal, and probably have quite a ways to go as well. And I haven't had to touch the wheel in the last 20 minutes because under 40 miles per hour, the BMW M8 competition here will drive for me, and it's actually watching my eyes. If I look away for too long, let's see, I can kind of do it here, trick the system. If I'm like on my phone, looking out the window, whatever, hear that beep, and it says stay attentive, and it would get upset and eventually cancel itself out if I weren't paying attention to the road enough. But as long as I'm just chilling here, hands off the wheel, watching the truck in front of me, it's doing its own thing. And haven't had to touch the pedals, haven't had to touch the wheel. I would absolutely have this sort of feature if I lived in any sort of metropolitan area where backups like this are certainly possible. Running along the coast here, coming down into San Diego. If you turn away from my Ariana Grande here on the screen, see how many miles we've done. 415 miles in the saddle of this M8 competition coupe. It is a really competent, well-rounded car that does take away from its specialness factor, I think, just a little bit. The fact that this thing is so approachable. And that's why I'm kind of like, well, unless you're going to be taking it out on the track or really, really flogging it regularly on some of the back roads, the 850i is going to do a lot of the same things for you that this car does. It's going to be just as nice and comfortable inside. You can get just as nice of an interior. It's actually going to drive better. Oh, look at that 2002. Nice. There are times when I come off from a light with this car and there's a jerky aspect. There were multiple times with Alyssa in the passenger seat where I had to be like, sorry, it's a weird throttle. It is a performance car at the end of the day. So unless you're going to be using it for that regularly, you can get the 8 Series, get the 8 Series Coupe. It's still going to look fantastic. Get the 850i. The M version is really cool when you dial it up to 11. You saw earlier in our sporty driving, one click of this M2 button, and all of a sudden you hear that, and it is cool. Don't get me wrong. And you dial it up with all these carbon ceramic brakes and the carbon package and everything. It is a cool product. But the fact that the rest of it just feels like an 8 Series, I don't think it has the same specialness factor as maybe some of its competitors, some of the other cars you can get at this price point. So just keep that in mind. All that to say, I think it is one of the most stunning cars at this price point. I love the looks. I love this Imola red. I've enjoyed driving it. The tech suite still works well, even though it's still rocking iDrive 7. I like that. It's pretty straightforward to use. I've liked having the wireless CarPlay and the wireless device charger and switching between the map and going into CarPlay and everything. It's been a nice car to have around, especially in an environment that I wasn't all too familiar with. And the fact that I've been able to get this level of performance and outside of the sporty driving still averaged about 20 miles per gallon, pretty darn good, as we're used to seeing with these BMW high-performance powertrains. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Chris, if you've made it this far in the video. And we'll be back at you with more coming soon. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie with Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.